Hey everyone, welcome back to Type 2 Cycling. If you've seen any of my recent videos, then you've probably seen me talk about a couple of big rides that I've got coming up in May. So I've got the 400km London-Wales-London endurance ride, and then the 600km Bryan Chapman Memorial audax. And in today's video, I'm just going to give you an update on how my training's been going and how much progress I've made over the last 6 months, both in terms of how much fitter I've got and how much weight I've managed to lose. So let's kick off by diving straight into the stats, shall we? Because I think that's probably the most interesting part. And then I'll tell you a bit about how I've got here and maybe what I've learned over those 6 months of training. So let's start by talking about FTP. My FTP was measured as 258 watts in the middle of August last year. And then most recently at the beginning of March, it was 320 watts. So that is a 62 watt increase or 24%. It's probably worth mentioning that that 258 watt measurement was after a period of not really doing much training. So I was definitely less fit than I was previously. Earlier in last year, it was getting closer up to 280, 290. So I think some of that progress I made was almost bouncing back from that low point. But nevertheless, it's a pretty good increase. I'm pretty pleased with it, to be honest. I've also been tracking my weight over the last 6 months or so, and I've gone from about 93 kilos in August, September last year to 89 kilos most recently. So I've lost 7 kilos over the 6 months. Looking at these things in combination, my watts per kilo for my FTP has gone from 2.7 up to 3.6. So overall, I feel like I've made some pretty encouraging progress. I'm pleased with it anyway. Obviously, it's all relative, isn't it? Like, everyone's different. What's good for me is just bang average for someone else. But I feel like I'm the strongest I've been on the bike ever. And I'm definitely the lightest that I've been in a long time, which is probably a good thing because I am pretty nervous about these big rides that I've got coming up. I think I'm going to need to be in as good a shape as possible just to get through them. So that's the numbers anyway, but I just thought I'd maybe talk a bit about sort of what I've been doing for my training over the last 6 months. Obviously, I'm by no means an expert. I'm just an average guy, but maybe you'll find it interesting. You might pick up a few tips yourself if you're going through a period of training or you just want to get fitter on the bike. So starting off with the workouts I've been doing, I've been following likeTrainerRoad, as I've probably discussed before in these videos, for the whole 6 months, but it's very much been like a tale of two halves. So back end of last year, I was probably doing sort of 3 90-minute workouts every single week, and a good couple of hours of endurance rides as well. And those workouts, indoor on the trainer, one VO2 max, one threshold, one sweet spot. Generally, I was doing quite a lot of volume, at least like by my standards. I'll show the graph up on screen, but you can see there's definitely quite a lot of hours, 4, 5, 6 workouts a week. And that really culminated in this week that I actually produced my first video on, which was my 30-hour training week. Now, obviously, this was quite a lot of work, a lot of calories being burnt. So I was eating a hell of a lot, not especially being strict with what I was eating. I was just trying to, fuel all the work I was doing. Having said that, I probably wasn't prioritizing my recovery as well as I should be. So, doing things like making sure I have enough sleep, adequate rest days, managing other stresses in my life. I was doing training in these 4-week blocks, and it would be like 3 weeks on and then 1 week off. By the time the end of that 3rd week, the beginning of that 4th week came around, like I was feeling pretty cooked. Like I was ready for that rest. And that's one thing I'd probably recommend for people that are wanting to get into more training or just get fitter, is sort of be mindful of that recovery and accumulated fatigue, and try and see your training as more of like a long-term endeavor, because it's not worth sort of burying yourself and going too deep just to, get through today's workout, if it then means you're going to struggle to do tomorrow's or, the workouts later in the week. Like, there's nothing wrong with skipping a day or just doing a light spin or chilling out for the day and then getting back on the bike, because I can assure you, I've learned from experience over time, you just bury yourself deeper and deeper in a hole, and then you need proportionally even more time to recover, to then get back to your best, to start doing some like high quality training afterwards. Obviously, it's really difficult when you're feeling super motivated for getting fitter, But sometimes, yeah, it's best just to kind of rein in a little bit and rest and recover, and then make sure you can maintain that consistency over the longer term. So at the end of this 3-month period, obviously we had Christmas as well. And I know like a lot of people love doing the festive 500, and I'd love to give it a go, but it's just not going to work for me because my missus absolutely loves Christmas and festivities and seeing family and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I don't think I'd get away with doing it. So as you can see, my volume dropped off around Christmas time. I was also away for a week on holiday, which didn't help, to be fair. At the same time, I started a new job at the end of the year, and I'm traveling into the office in London like 3 times a week. So I initially had to cut down those 90-minute workouts to 60 minutes just because I was struggling to fit it in with commuting, seeing friends and family, everything like that. And then more recently, I've kind of cut my training down even further. So I've had like some ongoing knee and hip issues, and I've been seeing a physio, and he said I've got a hip impingement. So basically I'm trying to work with them to sort of strengthen up the muscles and get over that. And my physio recommended dropping the intensity a bit. So instead of 3 1-hour workouts, I'm just doing 2 intense workouts. I'm still doing endurance stuff, you know, whether on the trainer or outside when the weather allows. But yeah, that intensity has dropped down even further, just to a couple of hours a week. Now, I am conscious that that's not really a lot of volume, especially for someone that's got like a 600 kilometer, 40-hour ride coming up in May. So my plan is to sort of gradually increase that lower intensity, like endurance volume over the coming couple of months. But I'll probably, for the time being anyway, depending on how my hip goes, just stick with, you know, a couple of hours of intense work. Now, I've talked about TrainerRoad in a couple of my previous videos, and as I said, this is what I've been using for my training program over the last 6 months. And it's been really helpful, to be fair, because as I've said, I've had to like adjust my training volume, which days I can train on, add some target events like the London-Wales London ride that's a couple of weeks before the Bryan Chapman audax. And each time I've just been able to go on the app, sort of plug these changes in, and then it like reshuffles your calendar for you and also adapts to like the progress you've been making from 1 week to the next. And as I think I've said, it just takes the cognitive load out of it. Like I don't really have to think about what I'm doing. I just load up the app and see what's in store for the week ahead and just let it do its thing. And another thing I found really interesting over the 6 months actually is sort of how different types of workouts have got easier or harder. So like I've always been a sprinter. That's probably like naturally what I'm best at. So I've never particularly struggled with like the kind of short VO2 max intervals, you know, like 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, or 40-20s or whatever. But like at the other end of the spectrum, long, relatively slower sweet spot workouts started off being really difficult for me. But it's been quite interesting that sort of over time, as I've done more of them, it's obviously like dragged up that part of the power curve, or whatever you want to call it. And I've actually made quite good progress, been pretty limited with time and only been able to do like a couple of workouts each week. It's been quite nice I feel like I'm still making progress, even though, I'm not doing anywhere near as many hours as I was at the beginning of these 6 months. That's the training anyway, but I think it's worth me touching on sort of diet and nutrition as well, because obviously this weight loss has been, especially more recently, like quite a big goal for me. You know, the London-Wales London ride and the Bryan Chapman Memorial Audax are both like really hilly. I think Bryan Chapman has, about 8,500 meters of climbing, and I'm naturally a bigger, heavier rider. So it's been quite a big priority for me just to try and lose a bit of weight, just so I can, drag my ass up these hills a little bit more easily. I've been trying to take like a gradual approach to the weight loss, no crash diets or anything like that, like just snacking less, trying to eat a bit more of like a balanced diet with my meals. Nothing particularly novel or interesting, but just try and slowly drop the weight while ideally sort of maintaining some semblance of muscle mass. But I'd say the biggest thing has probably been just cutting back on like chocolate and sweet treats. Like I have a proper sweet tooth, and previously I'd have like a bit of chocolate or something like every evening. So part of this has just been trying to break out of that routine and yeah, not indulge quite as often. I've not been like calorie counting or being particularly scientific with this, to be honest. I'm just trying to be a bit more conscious about how much I eat, eating healthy foods, and also making sure at the same time that I'm fueling enough for the workouts that I'm doing. Like I think it's easy to think that you should just sort of starve yourself, and maybe initially I was kind of thinking in this way, do like fasted rides and stuff like that. Maybe it works for some people, but definitely for me, I found that it's better to eat enough to fuel your workouts and to put in that quality work on the bike, and then maybe eat a bit less on your rest days when you're perhaps not like expending as many calories. Another huge thing for me has just been trying to get enough protein in. So as I said, like until recently I've been 90 kilos plus, and I've always been like a little bit more muscly, I suppose. I've never been particularly skinny or anything. I've been trying to maintain sort of my strength and like do a bit of strength work with physio or in the gym, and obviously you need the protein to sort of maintain and repair that muscle. So yeah, I've been trying to keep my protein intake high and hopefully lose the weight by burning fat rather than burning too much muscle. I've been consciously trying to have a bit of protein with each meal, whether that's like chicken or lentils or beans or whatever, but just due to sort of my size and the amount of protein I need, I've been supplementing with protein shakes as well. I know like it's probably mixed opinions within the cycling community about protein supplements and whether you need them, whether they're effective, but I think just for me, the amount of protein that I in theory should be consuming, it would cost a bloody fortune just to eat it all with chicken breasts or whatever, and also would be quite a lot more calories ingested as well. So I think for me it's like an easy, cost-effective, efficient and like relatively healthy way to get that extra protein in. I guess it might not be necessary like for a lot of people, especially if you're a bit smaller, but I think for me it's definitely been the way to go. And I think as well it's pretty well documented that getting enough protein in can help you sort of feel fuller for longer and avoid those hunger pangs. And to be honest, like prior to these 6 months, I'd never really tried to lose weight. I've never felt like I've needed to. So yeah, dealing with those feelings of hunger has been like one of the challenges for me. And I think obviously having protein makes you feel fuller for longer, less hungry. It's definitely sort of helped with that transition for me. The other thing I've noticed with trying to lose weight is there's definitely like a big psychological element to it. I think like it's so easy to get obsessed with the numbers and to get a bit disheartened if they're not going in the right direction over the shorter term. And obviously like there's a whole sort of diet industry that's been built off of these feelings. I've been weighing myself every day, but I've noticed like there's so much variation from one day to the next, and even within the same day, like before or after a ride, like I could be sort of like 1.5 kilos heavier one day compared to the previous day. And it just, you can't get like bogged down in the numbers too much over the really short term. Like I've been using this app called Happy Scale, and it kind of, you log your weight every day, but it gives you like a moving average and it shows you like your trend line. And I found that's kind of more useful to look at and gives you like a better idea of sort of how you're progressing over time. Because yeah, you could be dehydrated one day and you've lost like 1 kilo, or maybe you've eaten a bit more, or maybe you've weighed yourself in the morning one day and then the evening the next day and you're like this much heavier, and then you'll start to think, oh, why am I bothering with this? This isn't working. And I suppose it can be like a bit of a slippery slope where you start to see food as the enemy rather than like something you actually need, obviously just to live, and especially to like fuel your training if you're doing a lot of that as well. So yeah, obviously there's this big psychological element to the weight loss, and yeah, it's been interesting for me kind of experiencing some of these like potential sort of negative effects of trying to lose weight. But I suppose ultimately, as much as I'm sort of concentrating on this, I'm trying not to be too strict with myself and thinking it's probably better for me in the long term to try and prioritize like my mental health and feeling good, you know, having that piece of cake, or having a day when I'm not thinking about the food, I'm just enjoying myself, or going out for a nice meal or whatever, you know, with the expectation that, you know, feeling good about myself, I'm going to be able to continue with the weight loss, you know, all the way up to May, rather than, yeah, getting too bogged down and just becoming miserable, to be honest. But yeah, I appreciate this is a pretty sort of nuanced topic, and, you know, everyone's got their own views and their own challenges, to be fair, when it comes to like food, losing weight, diet, probably especially within the cycling community. But yeah, that about wraps it up for the last 6 months, to be honest. Yeah, I feel like I've made some good progress. Obviously, I'm going to continue my training and trying to lose a bit more weight over the next couple of months. I'm heading up to the Lake District at the end of the month, so going to do a nice sort of 100-mile or so route there, try and take in as many of the big climbs as I can. As I've said, yeah, Essex is pretty flat, and I need to get some more hill climb training under my belt. So what a better place to do it than up in the Lake District, you know? So keep an eye out for that video on the channel, probably sometime in early April. I'll do another training update before my big rides in May as well. And then obviously I'll be producing videos for London, Wales, London, and for the Bryan Chapman Memorial Audax. So yeah, hope you've enjoyed the video today. If you do want to see how I get on with those big rides, then yeah, feel free to subscribe to the channel, and hopefully I'll see you on the next one.